half in the bag.
Stranger Things is an 8-episode series from Netflix. Set in Middle America in the early 80s, the show is about a young boy that goes missing in the woods. His friends search for him and instead find a mysterious young girl with a shaved head and telekinetic abilities. Also looking for the boy are his mother and the town's police chief. Mysteries abound in a tale that's part Spielberg, part Stephen King, part John Carpenter, and part every other movie you can possibly think of from the 80s. The show was created by the Duffer Brothers, who also wrote and directed the film Hidden, starring Alexander Skarsgård, which we have recommended multiple times on Half in the Bag. That's right, we liked the Duffer Brothers before it was cool, yo.
Yeah, Netflix makes some pretty quality programming. Mainly this and Orange is the New Black. I like that, and this program is good. It's not great. It's good.
Well, we got to get in because everybody's raving about this show. Everybody loves this show, so we got to get in before the backlash starts, which will happen soon, I'm guessing. I really loved the show. The main thing that people are talking about with this show is the nostalgia. Every article, every review, 80s nostalgia. That's the least interesting aspect of it to me. I think this plays to anyone because it works as a period piece more so than remember the 80s. I think you have to have a story like this set in a simpler time.
Yeah, you should clarify. It's not 80s nostalgia, it's 80s movie nostalgia. Because
yes.
It's not like Rubik's Cubes, Atari, it's
well,
not,
that's the way people are talking about it, though, as if it's that, and it really isn't.
It pays homage to all the ideas and like things that are memorable from lots of 80s things. Like, there's Poltergeist, The Goonies.
E.T. is a big fucking one.
E.T. There's Stephen King's It. Which is just like a little too much. It feels very Stephen King-ish.
Oh yeah, down to the font.
Aliens, that's in there too. But yeah, it's basically like an amalgamation of 30 different ideas from different shows. It's very well done. I think the two biggest attributes are the performances and the unpredictability. And it's not so much it's like, wow, this is an amazing, original, clever idea. It's really like, it's the style.
It's a clever arrangement of pre-existing ideas. But yeah, the performances is the big one. The kids are all fantastic, and they feel like real kids. There's been so many movies, they feel like 80s movie kids, where they swear, they say shit all the time, which is great. They look like typical kids. The one kid, Dustin, is missing his front teeth. Apparently he is in real life, and they worked it into the show. The older sister of the main kid, her character's name is Nancy, which may be a Nightmare on Elm Street reference, I'm assuming. She looks like she's made of twigs. She looks like a marionette puppet.
She looks like the girl from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's what I've been like.
The girlfriend or the sister?
The girlfriend. Not Jennifer Grey, the
Sloane character?
Yeah. I was like, she could play that if they ever remade that.
They will.
And Steve, of course, looks like Jean-Ralphio from Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Which someone has made a theory about how this is connected to Parks and Rec, because it takes place in Indiana. And how he is the...
That is Jean-Ralphio?
He is the brother of Jean-Ralphio.
Okay.
There's some kind of goofy theory, but he's kind of a funny looking guy too. So his name's Steve on the show. But
yeah, all the kids look like real kids. They swear a lot. They play D&D. The show's not afraid to get dark, which I liked. I mean, you have the shaved head girl, 11, L they call her for short. She's using her telekinetic powers to snap necks, which gets pretty violent and fucking cool. So all that stuff is great. And the overall story I like. And I like that it feels like... I was thinking of Lost as I was watching it, because I was like, oh no, we're going to get mystery after mystery. And then by the end, we'll realize that they had no idea what the fuck they were doing. But this is a season, I mean, there's nothing confirmed that there'll be a second season, but you can watch this as an 8-episode thing and be satisfied with the conclusion. Even though it leaves things open for future stuff, I was satisfied with where it ended.
I think they have confirmed that they are making a second season.
Oh, last I heard they hadn't.
Which is problematic for me because they had this really great idea. They seem to be more in love with the style and the references and making something that was a love letter to 80s movies, as opposed to having a really interesting story. So I'm fearful of a second season because it's going to be like, because this is not. It was very well done stylistically, the presentation, the look, like the upside down is what they call it, right?
Yeah. That
was super neat, like this alternate dimension that existed on top of our own. The monster, as far as the story goes, it just sort of peters out, and then certain things that happen are sort of inconsequential to the overall story. Mainly, spoilers, I guess.
We'll say this whole thing is spoilers. It's hard to talk about without
at this point,
a TV show without getting into spoilers.
At this point, if you haven't watched Stranger Things, probably stop this discussion and go watch it if you want to. But if you've watched the whole thing, keep watching. I'm talking mainly about the part where the Nancy teams up with the missing kid's brother, Jonathan, to they buy like bear traps and weapons, and they're going to try and stop the monster too.
Their Nightmare on Elm Street booby traps thing. Yeah.
And they really don't. There were aspects that kind of dead-ended here and there.
My favorite takeaway from that aspect, though, is the asshole Steve shows up.
Yeah.
Just and he kind of turns into a little hero, and he actually helps them out. Kind of subverts the typical 80s asshole boyfriend trope.
That's what I mean by unexpected. Is a lot of the characters, and the big one is the sheriff. Oh yeah. Played by
David Harbour.
David Harbour, one of my favorite actors. He plays the sheriff, and at first, Winona Ryder is the mother of the missing kid, and she comes in and she's like, help, my kid's missing. And he's like, look, yeah, he's run off on his bike somewhere. And I'm like, oh, he's going to be the disaffected sheriff who doesn't fucking help anybody.
99 out of 100 times, kid goes missing, the kid is with a parent or a relative.
What about the other time?
What?
And then it turns out, he gets really involved.
Starts breaking into the facility.
And he has nerve. And he has a nice backstory.
Yeah.
Involving his daughter who, I guess we're in spoilers. Died of cancer.
Yeah.
And there's a nice little the proper use of flashbacks.
Yes.
Unlike Suicide Squad.
Flashbacks that were intended to be flashbacks.
Not footage you didn't want to use, but intentional flashbacks that are triggered by imagery that's currently happening. So it's very well done. They should have hired these guys to make Suicide Squad.
This show feels more cinematic to me than Suicide Squad.
Yes, it does.
It suffers a bit here and there from obvious budgetary constraints. But
mainly the CGI and the monster. But that's where it's like, I don't care, because everything else is working.
I do wish with the monster it's completely CG, and if you're doing this sort of 80s homage thing, guy in a rubber suit would have been completely fine.
Yeah.
But that's a minor point, because the monster's not a huge part of it, and you don't see it very much.
And also, tonally, when you have little kids in the 80s movies, you're, with the exception of Stand By Me, your Explorers, your Goonies, your actual villain is seen through the perspective of the kids. So it's not a murderous, violent, real-life monster. It's usually something a little less violent, but it seems scary through the eyes of little kids on bikes.
Right.
E.T., things like that, where it's perceived danger, and this is a real fucking horrible monster.
Yeah.
And I'm also withdrawing it from those examples.
Well, I think one of the best things about the show is that it has, you have the...
It's like if you had little kids on bikes doing battle with Freddy Krueger.
I think the tone of the show is very well balanced, though.
It is.
As far as the threat to the little kid, because you have the kids, you got the teenagers, and you got the adults. You basically have 3 different storylines going on that they keep cutting around from. They're all connected, but they almost feel like the influences are from 3 different types of 80s movies.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think I think the tone is handled, balanced really well.
It's blended as well as it could be.
Yeah.
As well as it needed to be in order to pull this off. And they pulled it off, but as far as the story goes, I think they would need a better script screenwriter for a second season to come up with a really good story, because they did a really great job with the characters.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like the overall plot of like, oh, we opened up an interdimensional thing and this monster's
Well, I kind of liked that it wasn't, because I was worried, like I mentioned Lost, I was worried early after the first couple episodes that it would be like this unraveling giant mystery, and there's all these different mysteries, and it's like, no, it's pretty straightforward. It's just the information is given to you as the series goes along, and I was fine with that. And I was fine that some of it's left vague. I'm assuming they can expand on it more in a second season, but if they don't, I'm okay with where it ends. Can we talk about Winona Ryder, though? I have an opinion on her that apparently everybody disagrees with, but I think she sucks on this show. I think she's one note. She's shrill and unconvincing at all times. And everybody else is saying she's great, so I know I'm in the minority on this, but it's like she's just constantly frazzled with the big eyes, and she's, fidgety. In every scene, like there's a part,
the Leonardo DiCaprio scene.
Maybe, like, because she, her son is in the Upside Down, and he's trying to communicate through electrical devices, which is cool. And then, like, he's trying to talk to her over the phone, and the phone gets, burnt up. So she goes to the store she works at to get a new phone. It would be great in that scene when she's in the store if she was trying to stay calm, trying to stay composed. Instead, she just comes in and she's frazzled, like she is in every other scene.
Yeah, well, I blame that on the direction. Her character in this was crazy and hysterical, mostly all of the time.
Even before the kid goes missing.
Yeah, and you could have played her very disaffected and withdrawn and confused, and that you could have played it differently. I don't know which one would have drawn more sympathy from the audience.
I just would have liked to have seen it played with some range, as opposed to being hitting the same note through the entire thing.
Yeah.
That was my problem with it.
Where she realizes she's crazy, or the idea that her son is talking to her through light bulbs is crazy.
Right.
But at the same time, she's still trying to keep her wits about her and maintain a perception in the public that she's dealing with everything okay.
Yeah.
It was a complex set of circumstances, and yeah, it could have been handled with some more depth. Instead, she's frazzled, crazy lady the whole time.
Yes.
I understand. I don't think her acting per se was bad.
I guess. I don't know. I don't know anything about these Duffer Brothers other than their movie Hidden. So everyone else is great, though. Everyone else hits a bunch of different notes. The girl that plays 11 is the standout. I really liked her a lot because she starts out and you can tell that she's like, she doesn't talk a lot. You can tell she's frustrated that she's not able to communicate better. And for a young, an actor of her age, I thought she handled that really well.
Yeah.
What did you think of the music? I know we talked about John Carpenter. You weren't a fan of his
They ripped
music.
off our Space Cop score.
I like the music in this. I don't think a lot of people are comparing it to John Carpenter. There's a couple themes that remind me of John Carpenter, but it more so reminds me of, it is synth, it's 80s. It reminds me more of like Tangerine Dream. It's a little more complex. John Carpenter's scores are very, very simplistic.
I thought the music was cute. That's my reaction.
Okay.
And it wasn't distracting.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, look at us, we're doing the 80s thing, look at us.
Yeah,
It felt like homogenous. It felt natural. And I really liked that intro.
Oh yeah.
opening
Well,
credits
that's
was
I
great.
knew within the first 10 minutes of the first episode I was going to be into the show because, you know, they set up the 80s era, they set up all the characters, and then boom, you cut to that music and that opening credits. I was like, I'm in.
The retro 80s stuff is not really my thing. I liked the Turbo Kid movie just because it was just so over the top violent and crazy and
Right.
fun. And I like this on a different level. It was
Well, like I mentioned, for me, this felt more like it works as a period piece, not just an 80s nostalgia fest.
right.
There are aspects, and maybe this is nitpicky, but like the kids in the basement, they're playing D&D, and there's a John Carpenter's The Thing poster in the background. And this show's set in '83. That movie came out in '82. It flopped horribly. It was a critical failure. No fucking kid in '83 is gonna have The Thing poster. And later, there's an Evil Dead poster in the kid's bedroom. It's like no one had an Evil Dead poster. It just didn't happen. The directors put it in there because they like it.
Yeah, that was a wink to the less specific audience.
Yeah.
Oh, this movie takes place in the 80s, doesn't it? Why aren't they using their cell phones? It takes place in the 80s. It wasn't overt. It wasn't hit you over the head with Rubik's Cubes.
Well, that's, I think of like, because when I complained, I think it was Pixels, where I was complaining about the celebration of nostalgia. And you look at the opening of Pixels, where it's like 80s music and, you know, all that stuff. And that kind of thing bothers me. This was more like, it's set in the 80s because it was a simpler time. And it works in that respect.
It was more like this series would be like this if it was made back then.
Yeah.
Not so much like, yeah, look at us. It's more subtle and but more of a homage to 80s movies.
Which leads into my question: where does, and this is the aspect of the show that I'm wondering about, where does homage end and ripping off begin?
Oh yeah.
Because there's a lot of E.T. is in this. You replace E.T. with Elle, the little girl. There's so much E.T. in this.
Yeah, I think I started to get annoyed when the one kid is shooting the monster with the slingshot.
Yeah.
Like trying to hit Pennywise the clown in the head.
Yeah, that's very it. But I mean, even just like shots. There's a shot early on when the kid runs out of his house into the shed out back, and it's like the exact same framing as E.T.
I thought Elle was going to make them fly on their bikes.
I was waiting for that to happen.
Like,
There's a similar
they can't
scene.
do that, can they?
No, they do something pretty cool though, where she flips the van over, which was
Yeah.
neat. But yeah, that whole chase scene was very much E.T. And not even 80s stuff. There's some things. There you go. But there's a couple things in this that were not even 80s, which makes me wonder, like, is this homage or ripoff?
Is that the part when Nirvana showed up?
No, it's when Elle is in the sensory deprivation chamber, and we see she's in that like completely black environment, and it looks like she's walking on water, kind of. Exactly the same thing as the movie Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson, which is one of my favorite movies of the last few years. It only came out a couple years ago, and it's identical. And it's like, well, this isn't an 80s homage, clearly. Is this a ripoff? As much as I love the show, I love the story of the show. Like, it's taking all these influences and elements, kind of like Tarantino does, where it's like it becomes its own thing.
Yeah.
But there's so many like shots and like the Under the Skin stuff is like identical.
I would shout plagiarism or whatever if the writing and acting and directing and everything in it was bad, where it's like, this is shit.
Okay.
But it is very transformative, like a Tarantino thing, where Tarantino was inspired by Grindhouse and 1970s and kung fu movies from the 60s and all that, and he took all those things that he loves and did his own thing with it, and kind of that's what they did. The characters in this are really strong and unique. They're
Yeah.
not like tropes or whatever.
Well, some are tropes, but then it does a fun thing where it kind of, has a twist to it.
Right.
And it's a good example of, it doesn't do that with everything. Like you have like the asshole boyfriend, he has his friend characters that are just typical 80s side jerk characters. But what it does is show that cliches exist for a reason, because when they're done well, they work. And that's this show.
Yeah.
And even the supporting characters are fleshed out well enough where you understand them. There's all sorts of fan art for Barb, who's in like barely in 2 episodes, but she's like a fan favorite because you understand her just in the couple scenes she's in. You get it.
Yeah, it's a gray area on whether or not something like this is unique, or if the homage is taken too far. I don't know. I'm okay with it. I enjoyed it as a good like mystery monster movie. We could call it a movie.
It's basically a really long movie, which is why we're talking about it on Half in the Bag when we don't talk about TV shows.
Yeah, sometimes there's just too much to talk about in TV shows.
Yeah.
This is a very, 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 very long movie. And it's right up our alley, which is why we're discussing it.
Exactly.
Because I could talk about Ghost Adventures.
You see that axe? Do you want to do more killing? Do you see anything around me, bro?
No.
Do you see anything around me?
It's difficult to see all the way to your right because the door
Where's
cuts
the axe,
off.
bro? I can't see the axe.
It's right above your right hand. You're about to hit it.
Is this where you hid? The night that you brutally killed this family?
It does move a little too slow. I think this could have been a movie because it's like it does have that Lost quality where it's like, oh God, we gotta watch the next one. So I don't know.
I think it works perfectly as 8 episodes. If it was any longer,
No.
like it's long enough where it fleshes out the characters more than you would get in a movie.
Yes,
which is good.
That's true.
So I think it's the perfect length. It's the perfect length for this particular story.
Perfect length, well done, well acted, questionable origins, questionable motivations, but very good, and also questionable second season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a show like this usually.
Sink or swim, as they say.
Exactly. Usually a show like this ends and there's elements that are left open. And you're like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next. This one, I'm hesitant to see what happens next.
Yeah, it didn't leave you with a big cliffhanger. There's some elements that say this could be expanded on, but it's like, okay, is a killer in the woods with a hockey mask going to show up in season 2?
Are they going to go to a different series of references?
The D&D kids their mom says, you guys got to go to a summer camp. Camp Crystal Lake. I'm sorry, Crystal River.
If the entire second season is just a Friday the 13th homage, I would be on board.
I know you would.
If they just went in a completely weird direction that makes no sense, I would be on board for the wrong reasons, but I would be okay with it.
She can't have gone far.
So, Mike, would you recommend Stranger Things?
I'm going to call it Sounds Like Teen Spirit. I would. Yeah, go watch it, sure. Whatever. Watch it if you got a whole bunch of fucking nothing to do with your week. It's the monster. The monster is killing everybody. Monster from another dimension.
I would also recommend it because Matthew Modine looks just like David Cronenberg in it.
There it is, Jay. I made a website.
Oh my God, that website is beautiful.
I worked really hard on it. www.lightningfastvcrrepair.com.
Did you say www.lightningfastvcrrepair.com?
That's our website.
Oh my God.
Now that they've stopped making VCRs and people are going to need their old ones fixed, now our website's up and running. All we got to do is sit back and wait for the funk.
Oh, it rang right away.